I read 11 different manga made by 4 popular YouTubers to see which manga are worth recommending, and yeah, okay, there aren't actually a lot of YouTuber made manga that are worth recommending. Like, the only good manga from the last video I did was goddamn Dog Ningen. But for this video, I'm going to start with my new favourite, a series that I now consider to be the undisputed king of YouTuber made manga. Because DD Mark's Ruthless Render is just that goddamn good! When it comes to manga made by YouTubers, I don't care what anyone else says, because this is it. This is the pinnacle. For how polished it is, it's insane that it's longer than 5 chapters, and best of all, it's just straight up free to read online. Ruthless Render is a manga about a group called Revokers who use their powers to fight monsters called Renders, with the main character being an outside party, whose power is that they are mysteriously able to transform into a Render. Ruthless Render is an amazing battle shonen, with a fun power system, fun enemies, and an intriguing mystery. And on top of all that, Ruthless Render is drawn amazingly. Its art style is cartoony and fluid, yet still manages to pack in a lot of detail. Like normally when it comes to action in manga, you've got to sacrifice detailed drawings in favour of having the action scene flow and be exciting. Like the trap that so many YouTubers fall into is hiring the best artists with the most realistic art style to make their manga. And that usually comes with the problem of extremely stiff fight scenes, because character designs like these only have the range of motion of an action figure. But Ruthless Render hits that balance between being super detailed and super readable. Like, despite being so high quality, I was never lost in any of the action scenes. And that's an impressive thing to do, since I'm normally an idiot who can't follow anything. But what impresses me the most about Ruthless Render is the fact that it is drawn by the YouTuber. DD Mark is writing, drawing, and publishing his own manga, all while keeping it free to read. And for the quality of Ruthless Render, that is incredible. But like all manga, Ruthless Render isn't completely perfect. Like, there was something I noticed while reading Ruthless Render that I found a little suspicious. That being that some of its elements take a lot of inspiration from Chainsaw Man. And I don't mean the surface level stuff like the main character turning into a devil with blade arms. I'm talking about the fact that his character arc is that when he turns into the devil with blade arms, he feels like he's losing his humanity, which was something that Denji also struggled with. Ruthless Render has a lot of elements that Chainsaw Man also has, from stuff like character arcs to character dynamics to concepts that I've only ever seen in Chainsaw Man, and even things beyond Chainsaw Man, like unique powers from popular series will just make an appearance in Ruthless Render. And it's not like Ruthless Render uses any of these elements badly, but like, I've already read this stuff before. Anyway, even with all that, Ruthless Render is still really fun to read. Like, when it comes to manga made by YouTubers, this is as good as it gets. So if you're planning on reading any of the manga in this video, then maybe try reading DD Mark's Ruthless Render. Since Ruthless Render was made by just one person and still managed to blow me away, I had really high expectations going into Cory Kenshin's Monsters We Make. After all, it was made by a team of professionals, hired by Cory Kenshin after he quit YouTube for 2 years just to work on this manga. So it's too bad that Monsters We Make just made me feel nothing. Monsters We Make is a horror action manga set in a cyberpunk fantasy world where monsters exist and attack people, with the only ones who can stop them being school kids with superpowers. It starts its story with a 4-chapter long exposition dump, in which we basically learn everything about the world and characters in one go, and then the next 4 chapters is about the main character hunting his first monster. I think that the entire premise of this manga is just going to be hunting different monsters using superpowers, which sounds interesting on paper, but this first hunt was really boring to me. They basically just wrote the first hunt to try and introduce the main cast, which, like, yeah, that's something you're meant to do. But all of these characters and their powers are so generic and uninteresting. For a story centered around its power system, you'd think that they give the main cast something cool to win me over with. Or, you know, maybe give me an actual reason to care about them. It's the same with the villain of the first hunt, who is just some generically evil monster with a more in-depth backstory than any of the main cast. It didn't seem to have any powers itself, other than just being super durable, and that makes me wonder, like, will any of the monsters in this manga ever be given powers themselves? Because if every future villain is just going to have super strength, then like, who cares? Nobody cares about a monster without a gimmick. People watch Jujutsu Kaisen because they fight monsters with fun powers. But even if Monsters We Make eventually do give the monsters powers, I don't trust this series to make the powers interesting, since Monsters We Make created a team with such uncreative and generic powers, like the girl who controls plants, who only really uses it during the first hunt to heal someone, or the guy who gets extended screen time to talk about his power, which is technology. Now, what does having the power of technology do? You figure it out. I'm pretty sure it's just an engineering degree. Then there's the mysterious leader with just a sword, the girl with superhuman strength, which is weird because every character already has superhuman strength as the default, so I guess they just couldn't come up with anything else for her. And lastly, there's the main character, who has the power to control sound, which basically just means that he can shoot sound like it's a sort of energy, and can also charge up his attack by absorbing all the sound in an area to shoot even more energy, all of which is represented through solid black colouring. That is probably the most boring way I've seen sound represented in manga. Like, Ruthless Render also has a character who can control sound, and so the artist took it as an opportunity to draw something really cool. Monsters We Make is drawn amazingly, but that's about it. The action never really did anything especially interesting, since the main cast hardly used their powers. All they really did was hit the monster until it went down, which maybe I would have found entertaining if the choreography amounted to more than just punching super hard. The weird thing about reading Monsters We Make is that every other YouTuber made manga I've read, no matter how bad, has always given me the impression of something more. Like a writing style, or maybe a theme. But Monsters We Make truly feels like the first manga I've read that's empty. Like it's just soulless. This manga doesn't feel like it's from the brain of Cory Kenshin, it feels like a product made by Cory Kenshin's team. The way Cory Kenshin talks about this manga, it's like it's a compromise. Like he wanted an anime but couldn't afford it. So he's making a manga because maybe one day it will get popular enough to get an actual anime adaptation.
You can have the rawest action scenes, you can have the most fire visuals, you can have the cleanest music, the nicest sound effects, or I'm talking about anime.
Cory Kenshin talks about wanting an anime adaptation a lot, and I always wondered like, why? I mean, sure, an anime can look prettier than a manga, but you would still be telling the same story. And even though anime do fights better, which is probably why Cory Kenshin wants an adaptation so bad, the medium of manga has its own strengths that Cory Kenshin could take advantage of. But then I stopped wondering why when I saw this Monsters We Make animation. And oh my god, no wonder Cory Kenshin has such a skewed view of anime. This is amazing. And I'm not talking about the art style or the animation, I don't care about that. I'm talking about the fact that this 1 minute long trailer visually communicates stuff that the manga didn't. First of all, the girl whose power is being strong actually gets shown to be strong. The girl whose power is to control plants actually uses it to do more than just heal someone. The mysterious leader gets his powers shown, which is probably just a spoiler they put in because this is a one-time animation, but we don't see his powers in the first hunt, and just having a panel that looks like this would have been really intriguing instead of showing us just nothing at all. But like, where were the application of these powers in the manga? All of these moments could have also been done in the manga. Hell, just simply screenshot parts of this trailer and you get better action panels than what we got in the manga. But at the end of the day, that's not the core problems with Monsters We Make. Even if the manga was executed extremely well, I still didn't like its premise, characters, villains, or even powers. There's something that just doesn't feel right with Monsters We Make. It didn't do anything that felt interesting or creative. It technically made a cohesive story, but I mean, it's not like it was entertaining. Anyway, Monsters We Make isn't a horrible manga or anything, but it's definitely not a good one. Like when you read other YouTuber series like Ruthless Render, it just makes Monsters We Make feel like a first draft in comparison. So yeah, I wouldn't bother reading Cory Kenshin's Monsters We Make. But hey, at least Monsters We Make has released multiple chapters, unlike other YouTuber made manga like Devoro by the Masked Man. A manga that released one chapter 3 years ago, and then one chapter 1 year ago, and then nothing else. Oh, and both chapters he released are two completely different stories, both called Devoro, both made by the Masked Man. The most recent chapter of Devoro is the best one, and that's because it's drawn like it's on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Like, some of its pages are absolutely insane. And I mean, I could hardly tell what the action was doing, but like, hey, this is way better than its first chapter, because the first chapter of Devoro was just a short story about a guy who joins a guild and takes a carriage ride. That's it. No action, no payoff, it was just the setup for a chapter 2 that never came out. Instead, 2 years later the Masked Man decided to reboot Devoro, changing the world, the characters, even the genre. This Devoro is about a guy who takes a job to kill a monster, despite the fact that everybody around him says that it's too dangerous for him to kill a monster. And I mean, they were right, but like, I was rooting for him. Anyway, after almost dying, a mysterious hunter kills the monster and saves the main character, leaving us on this cliffhanger. Which, like, I wish I had the amount of confidence the Masked Man has in thinking he can make a chapter 2 this time, because he chose to have this chapter drawn in such a hard to replicate art style. And I do have to wonder why he chose this art style for Devoro, like outside of the obvious reason of it looks good, because this super detailed art style is kinda bad for action. Over 2/3 of this chapter is spent with the main character fighting a random monster, and yet I could hardly understand what was going on. Right. Like, you know that trap some YouTubers fall into of hiring a super expensive artist because they think that more detail makes a better manga? Well, this is that trap. Like, yes, this is a good art style, but after reading over 40 pages of action, I don't think it was the right art style. I mean, the world and design of everything is 10 out of 10. It made me wish there was more of it because of how good it looked. And also because it shows so little of the world that an establishing shot would have really helped me understand where the characters were. Like, this entire chapter was really confusing to read, and even with its amazing art, I'm not sure there's actually any reason to read Devoro. I mean, the best way I can describe it is like when you watch a new series that immediately starts with a fight scene you have no investment in, so you kinda just have to wait through it. Like, that's the entire experience of reading Devoro. So if you really want to read it, then maybe wait for a second chapter. The next YouTuber made manga is from a YouTuber who actually started drawing before doing YouTube. Brandon Shen is a manga artist turned YouTuber who has published 8 different manga over on Webtoons. 8 manga with a total of 250 chapters between them. So for this part of the video, I am going to read all 8 manga but only briefly talk about them, starting from worst and ending with the best. So starting at number 8 with the worst Brandon Shen manga, it's definitely Dreams of an Inspired Author, which is a manga about Brandon Shen himself. It features Brandon Shen being tormented by a spirit who turns his dreams into comedic short stories, with all the stories being submitted in by the viewers. The chapters are only a couple pages long and were not really funny. Some don't even have a punchline, they just kinda start and then end. So yeah, it's bad. Number 7's Game on Gemma is literally just the same manga as number 8, except without Brandon Shen. Couple page long chapters, no punchline being set up, just random stuff happening. I do not recommend. Number 6 is Dodge, which is a one-shot split between 17 chapters. But it's still only got like 50 pages, so I don't know why they did that. It's a fun little story with a fun dodgeball theme, but that's about it. Number 5 is Blood System, an RPG fantasy where the main character turns into a vampire. It's good, but it only started publishing in June of 2025, so there's hardly any chapters. If it sounds like your thing, then just read it next year. Number 4 is Samurai no Tora. It's about a far future where Japanese swordsmanship becomes the #1 sport, and so swordsmen constantly duel each other to rise through the ranks. Samurai no Tora has a pretty simple premise, and a pretty simple story, and a pretty simple art style. You know what, the only thing I can say about this manga is that it's just fine, it does its job. The action is a bit lacking, but it was never bad, but I probably wouldn't recommend this to anyone. Third place is Angel Wings, which is about a demon wanting to become an angel, and an angel wanting to become a demon, so the two of them temporarily swap places to experience the other side. Angel Wings has a cool premise, with a story that takes forever to get to the premise. It really just feels like it only cares about the showmanship. It always showed some pretty art, then a bit of story. Showed some pretty metaphors, then a bit of story. Showed some pretty symbolism, then a bit of story. And it was narrating basically what amounted to a constant stream of poems. Like Angel Wings is an extremely high quality manga that feels like it needs to be edited down and streamlined. It's also like a 50 chapter long manga that only has 17 chapters so far, and after publishing for 5 months, it's been radio silent ever since early 2025, so it's way too soon to read it. Second place is Overtime Elite, which is a basketball sports manga that is not very faithful to the sport of basketball. It features a secret basketball society that tries to find new talent by having people compete in free-for-alls in order to find unconventional players that they call wildcards. Overtime Elite is like a basketball sports manga for people who don't know anything about basketball. Part of its hook is that it's completely over the top. Even the school the main character goes to gives you better food the better you throw a basketball, and also just straight up expels the worst performing students every month. I don't think I'd recommend Overtime Elite, but it is a very high quality manga for a certain type of reader. And the best manga that Brandon Shen has ever made is Just Like a Goblin. Set in an RPG fantasy world, 2 goblins disguise themselves as humans to try and infiltrate a town of adventurers, to find out why goblins are always being hunted. Just Like a Goblin has a very good premise, opens its story by exploring its premise and executes it really well. I have zero bad things to say about it. I really liked its story, I really liked its art style, I really liked its character designs. It's a good manga. Not like the greatest manga ever made, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, you should know what you're getting into if you've read anything with goblins or adventurers before. This is the kind of fantasy RPG manga I am always looking for, and for a fantasy RPG manga, it's the gold standard. If you like this genre, then definitely give it a try. So in the end, only 2 out of the 11 manga in this video were good enough to read. A worse ratio than the 1 out of 4 manga from last time, and that 1 out of 4 came from Dog Ningen. DH Animations, who wrote Dog Ningen, also has a personal series called Scarf Man that I was going to read, but every website that hosted it has deleted it, which really sucks. Especially since I had made a tribute video to DH Animations to put in the description of this video, and now it makes no sense. Anyway, if you haven't watched the first video about YouTuber made manga, the link is in the description, and if you like it, then try subscribing.